Sandra?
Let's bring in Mike Pompeo now, former Secretary of State and CIA Director under President Trump, also a Fox News contributor. Great to see you, Mr. Secretary. What was your response to that, by the way?
Yeah, you mean to the incident there on the Hugh Hewitt show?
Yeah.
Yeah. Goodness. You know, every candidate's got to make sure they know all the things that matter to Americans, and the fact that there's 1 million minorities, Uyghurs in Western China being held in what, for all the world, Sandra and Brett, looks like concentration camps from not so long ago in world history. Every candidate's got to know how they'd respond to it, how they'd deal with it, and we were at the center. I was the one who made the genocide declaration. Every candidate ought to understand the importance of religious freedom around the world and how it impacts us here at home.
Very good. Mr. Secretary, there are some pretty bold calls out there over how we handle this growing threat coming from China. One was presented right here on this program. This was GOP candidate Vivek Ramaswamy on how far he would go to stifle China's economy. Listen to this.
I would ban most U.S. businesses from doing business in China unless and until the CCP reforms its behaviors.
That would have serious economic consequences in this country.
I think it would have some short-term economic consequences, Sandra, but I do think that we can make those sacrifices if we know what we're sacrificing for. I think Xi Jinping will fold if he actually knows that we mean it.
Would you support us going that far as banning U.S. corporations from doing business in China?
Well, Senator, I'm not exactly sure precisely what that statement meant. I know what I was trying to do when I was Secretary of State. We were trying to make sure that America wasn't reliant on the Chinese Communist Party for things that really mattered. Think of our weapon systems, our wafer manufacturing for semiconductors, all the tools of American national security. We were working diligently on that. And then we were simply demanding that the Chinese Communist Party behave on the global stage the same way you ask every country to behave. And so a set of trade rules, you know, Senator, you've seen this. They steal millions of our jobs. They built their economy on the backs of the American economy. The United States has for 40 years simply turned the other cheek. That was an enormous mistake. I'm incredibly proud of what we did for 4 years to begin to turn the tide, and it's going to take even more determined effort. And I've seen lots of ideas from lots of Republican candidates. I hope we'll see them from Democrat candidates too, as this is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue of the highest importance.
Because clearly, as we have seen, this is a way in which these candidates see themselves being able to separate themselves from the pack. Another one of them came on the program, Mike Pence. This is what he said we need to do when it comes to China.
I've met President Xi. I know what the language there is strength. And if we make the right investments in our national defense, if we maintain our commitment to freedom of navigation and to supporting our allies in the region, I think it's the best pathway forward to peace.
You tell me, do they need to get more specific?
Of course, every one of them is going to have to put a lot of detail behind their proposals, but there was nothing that the former vice president said there that I would disagree with at all. But this is going to take real resolve. And to your point earlier, it's complicated. We, Europe, every country has deep economic connections to the Chinese Communist Party, and so it's not going to be instantaneous. But we've got to protect the things that matter: basic property rights, the rule of law, human dignity. Don't forget, this is the country that foisted a virus on the world that killed millions and millions of people all across the world and didn't lose an ounce of sleep over it. Xi Jinping didn't. We have to make sure we get this right for the American people. When we do, when candidates begin to talk about their specific plans, I'm confident we'll develop a strategy that actually leads to a Chinese Communist Party that fundamentally no longer threatens the United States in the way that this one does.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, finally, could I just get your response to this moment from President Biden? It happened earlier this morning. He was asked a question, and the answer is quite puzzling. Listen.
To what extent has Vladimir Putin been weakened by recent events? It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's losing the war at home. And he is become a bit of a pariah around the world. And it's not just NATO. It's not just the European Union. It's Japan.
So when asked, has Putin been weakened by recent events, the president said it's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. Can I get your final reaction to that?
My goodness, Sandra, that is so disturbing to have a president misspeak in this way on one of the most central issues of his administration. Look, I've applauded the Biden administration for holding NATO and the Europeans together, to support Ukraine. I'm glad that they have done that, but that's a big misstep to make a statement like that. And as for the central issue, has Putin been weakened? I think we don't know for sure the answer to that, but you can be sure he's worried about it. And you will see even greater lockdowns. You will see even more military around Moscow. You will see any leader that steps out and tries to get any power, like the leader of the Wagner Group, Prigozhin, had. You watch them; they will be squashed like a bug. And so there will certainly be changes from Putin as a result of what happened over the last, 96, 100 hours. We need a president that understands this threat in a way and can take it seriously and can explain it to the American people.
Good to get your thoughts on all of that. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us.
Sandra, Brett, thank you all. Have a good day.
Of course. Thank you. Brett?